My question is to the Minister for Housing. 2021 census data released last week revealed that in Wangaratta, homelessness has increased 67% since 2016. With the passage of the government's Housing Australia Future Fund legislation in doubt, I'm worried we will be left without a plan to fix this urgent problem.
Order. Order.
What's your plan B to guarantee my constituents will have a roof over their heads?
Give the call to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and the Minister for Small Business.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Indi for her question, and I also thank her for her constructive discussions around the Housing Australia Future Fund for when we passed it through this House, and I thank her for her support for that important piece of legislation. Because, of course, she does understand that this is critical to Australia's homeless people. On census night in 2021, there was 123,000 homeless Australians, and it is concerning, and it should be concerning to all of us in this place. It's a really serious issue. And indeed, that is why we last week announced some important funding for homelessness services. For the Reconnect service, over $90 million, and indeed an additional amount of $67.5 million for states and territories for homelessness services. This is on top of course, the National Housing and Homelessness Agreement, whereby we've just offered the states an additional $1.6 billion for the next 12 months. That's $1.6 billion for the next 12 months for housing and homelessness services that we have offered to the states and territories. And of course this fits with our housing accord, our National Housing Accord that was in our last budget. Our National Housing Accord, of course, is another 10,000 affordable and social homes, particularly affordable rentals, then this will be matched by the states and territories. That's 20,000 affordable rentals from the National Housing Accord announced in our last budget. We've already immediately released the $575 million from the National Infrastructure Facility, and there are already properties starting to go up on the ground around Australia today because of that money. So I'd say to the member for Indi, and I really appreciate this question, that we are having a broad housing agenda. Obviously, the Housing Australia Future Fund is central to that because that will allow us to work with other tiers of government, with institutional investors, with community housing providers, and indeed to leverage to get more homes on the ground more quickly, which is why it's so important. And as she indicated, there are vulnerable people right across Australia today that need that legislation through the parliament. So I would say to those opposite, talk to your senators in the Senate and tell them how important this legislation is. If you're serious about housing and the housing situation in Australia today, we need that bill through the parliament. And I would say to the Greens political party, this needs to be done and needs to be done quickly. We are already delaying this because, of course, the Greens wouldn't allow us to debate it in the Senate. So I say to the Greens political party, you go back to your electorates and you tell people that houses are not on the ground today because this was not able to be brought on in the Senate. There are vulnerable people in Australia today that need these houses and they need them today.